So, Steve, good afternoon, and are you happy to take questions when we finish from people who are online, yes or no?
Yes.
So for those of you online, you've just heard Steve the Atheist. He said that he's willing to take questions from you guys online when I finish engaging with him. But what we plan to do now is to have a discussion in regards to the success of George Galloway. So let me just set out my stall for you, Steve. Yeah, as you know, George Galloway won in Rochdale he got 39.6% of the vote. Simon Damchek, who's the Reform Party candidate, got 6% of the vote. Why do you think George Galloway done so well and Reform done so badly?
George Galloway is an opportunist. What George Galloway worries about the most is George Galloway. He has taken advantage of a situation for his own benefit. George Galloway depends on divisiveness and division and conflict. George Galloway loves to pit one group against another. George Galloway loves sectarian politics. That is appalling. This country does not want to go down the road of sectarian politics, playing on people's religion to get their votes. And that's what he did big time. I feel sorry for the people of Rochdale. Where are his policies on Rochdale? What is he doing today? What will he be doing tomorrow? His first day in Parliament, on the floor of the House of Commons. What will his first question be? It won't be about Rochdale. It won't be about the people of Rochdale. It'll be about an overseas foreign conflict. It won't be anything to do with Britain. And he's taken advantage of that subject for his own ego to get back on the floor of the House of Commons.
But let's pick up on the claims you have made, and hopefully I'm going to debunk all of them. Yeah, but I'm being devil's advocate. Yeah, and as you know, George started off as a Labour Party MP. He then got booted out.
Rightly so.
Rightly so, as you said. He then got elected in, was it Bow? No, Bethnal Green.
Bethnal Green.
Was it with a Respect Party?
Una King. Beat Una King, who was a fan. You know, I'm not a Labour supporter, but Una King, I think, was a pretty good member of Parliament.
Yeah,
she was a woman. She was not white, and this jumped up little.
So he got Una King. He got rid of her in Bethnal Green. He then lost that seat, and he tried to go next door. Was unpopular.
I don't even know. I mean, we could be months away from the general election. I don't know whether he'll even stand.
No, but we'll get to that in a moment.
If he does, he will lose his seat.
But that is not the point I'm making.
He's a rabble-rouser that wins by-elections and then he loses the seat.
But let's pick up on that, yeah. He's a rabble-rouser, but would you agree what George Galloway did was, and he correctly said that the tectonic plates were shifting in Rochdale, because if you look at what he managed to do, he was able to tap in on the moods of the people in Rochdale, and he won. And I'm now drawing a distinction with the Brexit Party and Reform UK. Didn't they not do exactly the same with the Brexit discussion?
What are you claiming Reform have done?
So, was the Reform Party not called the Brexit Party previously?
The Reform Party emanated out of the Brexit Party.
Did the Brexit Party not tune in on division in regards to Brexit?
No. Brexit was not a subject of division. There was people on both sides with differing views, people that wanted to remain in the EU and people wanted to leave, but I would not say that the raison d'etre, the substance of the Brexit party,
because it
was
looks
division.
like an arrest. So let's go back, Steve. So we was talking, in relations to Mr. Damchat, and I mentioned about Brexit.
To the Brexit, is this on?
Yeah, I've switched it on.
Substance of the Brexit party, the function, the purpose, the aim of the Brexit party was not divisiveness. Okay, the Brexit party was predominantly a one-issue party to leave the European Union, yes, but that doesn't make it divisive. I don't think you can in any way say the Reform UK are divisive in nature, whereas I think for George Galloway it's very self-evident that he's absolutely divisive. Just listen to what he says about Israel.
Richard Tice has claimed that during the election in Rochdale there was intimidation, there was all kind of dirty tricks campaign. Tell us more about that and what you've heard.
I probably know as much as you know, but the things I've heard, that there was intimidation at the voting centres, that there were violent threats. In fact, there was one violent threat on video of the individual who's now been arrested, who was threatening violence against Simon Danchuk. Richard Tice personally advised all Reform people to leave the count for their own safety because there was fear of intimidation and violence.
Or did he know that you was going to lose, hence the reason he said that?
No, that was not the reason. That was not the reason, you cheeky so-and-so. We didn't, I point out, Reform didn't actually win the two other recent by-elections. Reform did not leave the counting location on those occasions.
But specifically to do with George, you've correctly mentioned that George has won two previous elections during by-elections, but he never gets re-elected again.
Correct.
Yeah. So do you believe that is going to be the same on this occasion?
I do.
He is just...
I absolutely believe that. Now, I'm not even sure whether he will stand in Rochdale. I think he may want to come back and stand in Bow, where he stood before, or in Bradford, where he also stood before. But I think if he did choose to stand in Rochdale, I would predict he would lose it. Not least because the Labour Party will probably get its act together and have a candidate standing.
And what do you think about the original Labour candidate, Mr. Ali, and what he said, and the fact that Labour withdrew support for him?
It's absolutely right and correct that Labour withdrew support. Now, obviously, they should have done a bit of pre-screening so he wasn't appointed as their candidate in the first place. But of course it's now appalling that now that poor town, is it a town or is it a city? I think it's a town.
It's a town.
Has now got a Member of Parliament who comes out with the same vile anti-Semitic nonsense that the Labour candidate came out with.
And I think the only thing he said he's going to do for Rochdale is to bring a Primark there.
Really? You serious?
Yeah, that's the only thing. But moving on, let's talk specifically about the event I attended with you in Southall on, what day was it? Wednesday?
Tuesday.
On Tuesday. Tell us more about that, because I had the opportunity to meet and engage with, tell the people.
So, Howard Cox is Reform UK's candidate for the London mayoral elections. And he's going round all of London, visiting as many places, areas, boroughs of London as he can. And on Tuesday we were lucky enough to have him visit Southall, which is where I'll be standing in the general election. So we had a gathering of supporters and people that were interested in hearing about Reform. And it was a very informal meeting. It was very two-way, people talking about some of their local concerns, and Howard explaining his general position and policy on matters.
I went along as an impartial journalist. I'd always tried to be. I'm not always impartial, but I try to be. But I'm not a Reform supporter, I'm making that clear. But you invited me. and I believed it was important to get different points of view. But one thing I was really impressed with is Howard's knowledge, Howard's background, and the things he has done over the years. It is amazing.
It is really, really impressive. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
He's really down to earth. He's really friendly. He's really approachable. He's very bright. He's very switched on. He's had very impressive career positions in his career, and he has led Fair Fuel UK, and he has saved every single driver in this country thousands of pounds every year, but in their pockets from the impact that Fair Fuel UK has had. And currently, you know, we're hoping in the budget, which I think is this week, Wednesday of this coming week, that he will have had a big impact on the government by, if not freezing, lowering the fuel duty, because so much of the cost of living crisis is impacted by the cost of our fuel. Obviously, you know, many people drive vehicles, but it's not just people who drive vehicles. You know, everyone who pays a plumber or who has a home care assistant come and do care for them is paying in the pocket for the ridiculously high price of taxation on fuel. And Howard has, over many years, been campaigning really hard. And he is one of the most successful campaigners this country has ever seen. But I'll be honest with you, the challenge for Reform UK is getting Howard in front of people, is getting people to know and be aware of the guy and what he's done and what he proposes to do for London. Because I've not met a single person who's heard him talk, who's met him, who don't conclude that this is a great guy. And frankly, significantly more impressive than the Conservative candidate, Susan someone, I can't even remember her name, who is thoroughly unimpressive. She has actually been a GLA member. She's been on the GLA for 8 years, I believe. And what has she done to challenge Sadiq Khan? Absolutely nothing. I think she even chairs the police committee for the GLA. And what has happened? Police stations are closing down. Knife crime is going up. Violent crime is going up. She's been there in a position of power and influence and challenge to deal and challenge with these issues, but she's done absolutely nothing. Yet Howard Cox is a great guy who has done so much for the people of this country. But it's fair to say not everyone knows about him in London, and this is what we've got to get people to learn about. To learn about the man Howard Cox.
But what I'm going to do, yet again, I'm going to ask the people in the chat to pose your questions to Steve, and I will ask Steve questions on your behalf. So go into the chat, put your questions, the YouTube chat, put your questions to Steve, and I will ask. But the first question I want to ask you, Steve, you are the prospective parliamentary candidate.
Yep.
You know, and we've heard with what happened with Mr. Ali, the Labour Party candidate in Rochdale. Once you've been selected, you have to be very careful in regards to what you do, what you say, how you behave. Because if not, people will take advantage. So as a prospective parliamentary candidate, what's that like? Easy question, isn't it?
Well, you know, I've been coming to Speaker's Corners, you know, for a long time. Free speech is one of our freedoms in this country that I hold very dear. And I think Reform, as much as any party, respects that freedom. And therefore, you know, it respects that across its candidates. And Reform, it's a corny phrase, but we are a broad church. You know, we have people of different religions, of different ages, of different ethnicities, and of different political backgrounds.
Free Palestine!
We have people that are ex-Conservatives, we have people that are ex-Labour, but more significantly, we have people who've never had any direct involvement in politics before. So, you know, we're a broad bunch of people. But of course, you know, the selection process to be a candidate, you know, is thorough. you don't want people, you don't want extremists in the organisation. You don't want people with extreme unsavoury views in the organisation.
Well, we've got questions coming in, and the first question I'm going to ask is from Craig Stafford. Sorry, it's Craig Gifford. Can you please ask Steve if his party, the Reform Party, asks George Galloway to run for them as a candidate?
The honest answer is I do not know. I have no knowledge. I personally, this is just guessing and assumptions, what I'm about to say. I would imagine not. I would imagine. I'm aware that something was said by George Galloway, or someone has made an allegation. Or I find it very hard to believe. I can imagine something's been exaggerated or twisted, but as I said, I ultimately do not know.
Yeah. Timmy has said, Steve, does Steve think London is occupied by foreigners for the best?
I wouldn't use the word occupied. London is a very diverse city. Often, in my personal view, that diversity is something that makes London a great place to live. The fact that you've got restaurants, cafes, cultures of huge variance, to me, is a plus point. I myself am not anti-immigrant. I think immigration has added to this country. But today and now, our immigration is uncontrolled. It's not managed. The levels of illegal immigration are crazy. The way that it's being dealt with, or more accurately not dealt with, is an absolute outrage. But a capital city is always going to attract immigrants more than a rural village in the middle of Dartmoor. That's just the way it is in any country, anywhere. I think many immigrants that have come to London and many different cultures that have come to London are a solid, important, useful part of London. They work hard, they pay their taxes, they add to the culture. I would say the majority to do that. But of course there are some that don't. But I would say the vast majority do, and that they add to London.
An interesting question, the next one. The question of the year. It's from Can't Be Arsed, ARSED. Should Street Mike become Steve's press spokesman?
Yes, he should, and I'm sure he would do a very good job.
Fat Loba has said, why does Steve think that praising Jewish people is his path in life?
Well, I praise Sikh people, I praise Hindu people. Does that person have a particular issue with me praising Jewish people? I suspect they do, but I would praise all sorts of different groups. So, interesting why they pick out Jewish people.
Yeah. Gina,
particularly considering the massive increase in anti-Semitism against Jewish people across the country, but particularly in London, and not just hurty words on Twitter, but violent, aggressive, physical attacks that many Jewish people have faced since the 7th of October. So, as I say, I will support many different groups, but I will particularly support that group at the moment, considering what they're facing in London.
Gina from Cologne has made a comment.
Oh, my lovely Gina. Hello,
Gina from Cologne. Steve, are you glad you went into politics? It takes people like you to make things better.
Bless you, Gina. But did she put kisses on the end?
No. Do you know her?
Only through talking, messages online. Well, of course, I suppose it's how you define being in politics. I'm not actually in politics as a successfully elected politician yet. I'm obviously seeking to be. And I hope if I am successful in any way that I can then be a success.
I don't understand this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Ian DeCosta has said, what defences does Steve have against being coerced? You need more details than that.
By who? Corrupted or coerced by who?
Exactly.
I'm not, to give an answer, I'm not aware I've been corrupted or coerced by anyone.
Manny Cinder has asked a brilliant question. Ask Steve why he thinks all religions are evil while standing for election in Southall.
Well, there are people of religious faith everywhere, so I don't think it's any more of an issue for Southall than it is for anywhere else. I'm an atheist. That's my personal view. You know, well, it's kind of too late not to mention it because I'm well known for that here within Speaker's Corner. But, you know, I think anyone's religion or lack of religion is a fair question for anyone to ask. Does it have any bearing whatsoever on my politics and standing for election? I would say absolutely not.
Jason Bourne has asked what you think of Hope Not Hate.
Hope Not Hate are a registered charity. They're an anti-extremist group who work against all forms of extremism, far-right extremism, Islamist extremism. They have, as I would admit that many have across our society, have a particular focus, and I would actually say obsession with the far right, when I think anyone with an open mind admits that yes, there is a far right threat in this country, but proportionally it is minute compared with the threat of Islamism in this country. And I think they and the government, and even Rishi Sunak in that rather bizarre speech he gave outside Number 10 on Friday evening, always seems to want and need to throw in this threat of far-right extremism, which, as I say, exists, but it's tiny. It's insignificant compared with the Islamist threat.
Someone has asked, where does Jason Speaker's Corner? Steve, where do you go after Speaker's Corner?
Home, normally. Well, always, in fact. Occasionally to the pub, but generally, always, I do end up going home. Odd question, but anyway.
Does Steve have any resentment about our Roman occupation?
I assume they're talking about the historic Roman occupation. Well, I know the question sometimes is asked, what did the Romans ever do for us? But they actually did quite a lot for us. Yeah. The roads, the viaducts. Another odd question.
Lisa Sargent has asked a good question.
Another acquaintance online.
Yeah, me too. Would you work with a coalition government?
Me, personally? Yeah. Or the party? Well, sometimes that's the way the cards land. Sometimes one party gets an absolute majority. Sometimes it does not. Every political party would like to be in power and to win a majority. That doesn't always happen, and you just have to see with the situation that you are. But I don't think any political party should or would ever actively go out and enter an election talking about coalitions.
Yeah, of course not. So, Steve, as normal, all I can say is thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And you know I do like to be, I try to be, I'm not always impartial, I'll admit that, but I try to be. But I'll give you 2 minutes to look in the camera and say whatever you want.
Thank you very much. I would say, despite the unfortunate election of George Galloway, he did say one thing after his successful election, which I do agree with, and that is that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party today are different cheeks of the same arse. He was spot on that point. He was absolutely spot on. So I do agree with him on that point. There's much that I do not, and I thoroughly disagree with George Galloway on, but on that point I agree.
Can I just add on? His use of the English language and the metaphors.
Well, again, being fair and open and honest, I would say, to give George Galloway due credit, he is a fantastic orator. He is one of the best orators, and he also is charismatic. I mean, I despise the man as a vile, hateful individual, but he has charisma, and he was a great orator. But I guess people might say the same for Adolf Hitler, so that's not necessarily a great thing. But as I say, so going back to what I want to say is that, yes, Conservative and Labour are different cheeks of the same arse, and I just really, really wish people would stop voting for either of them. Neither of them stand for the core groups that they used to stand for. Labour Party doesn't stand for the working man and woman. Conservative Party aren't conservative. They don't stand for conservative people. Stop voting for them. With our first past the post system, it's very difficult for other parties to gain success. But to do that, people have got to stop voting for this two-horse race of Conservatives and Labour. No one is impressed and happy and satisfied with where the country is. The levels of trust and faith in our politicians today in Britain is at an all-time low. It's appalling. But if you keep voting for these clowns, you will keep getting these clowns. So Reform are a sensible, pragmatic, sensible party. We're in the middle. We are not far right. We are not far left. We are sensible people with practical, pragmatic views. Many of us who've never been in politics before, but we're choosing or trying to get into politics to make that real difference. So just look at us. If you've not heard of Howard Cox, if you've not seen Howard Cox talk, look him out. There's plenty of videos on YouTube, plenty of stuff on the internet. He'll probably be coming to a borough near you. Go and meet the guy, talk to the guy. He's very amiable. Go and ask him your questions. He will make a difference. He will do a better job than Sadiq Khan. I've yet to meet a person that likes Sadiq Khan. He will do a better job than Susan Hu, the Conservative candidate. Look into Howard Cox and consider giving Reform your vote on May the 2nd in the London mayoral elections and in the GLA elections.
Steve, thank you very much, sir.